Hello everyone and welcome to the book Refuge. And number one, isn't this smoky, sexy voice just the best today? Just kidding, I have hay fever. But that shall not keep us back. I am doing a dark and twisty recommendation video today. I'm going to be doing Captor Captive romances. Also called Kidnapping romances, also called one of the more fucked up taboos that you can read. So just a tiny bit of backstory. The first ever Captor Captive book that I read is in this list. And I remember being so horrified, but yet I couldn't look away because it had elements of BDSM in it, which I hadn't read very much of those yet either, but I knew what they were. And this person definitely seemed like a dom, but wasn't following any of the rules, which is the most important part if this is a BDSM relationship. Is there's a safe word. There is the hierarchy of needs. There is things that keep us safe. And those are gone when it's a captive-captor situation because that person has already, they've taken away all the safety to begin with and they don't have to listen to your safe word or stop or go easier on you. And that could be interesting. But first off, warning for this. Number one, hopefully you didn't pick to watch this video if you're not okay with the trigger warnings that are included in Captor Captive. Not all of these books include non-consensual situations, but a few of them do. Actually, most of them are consensual because our heroine usually either has given in to the person by that point or wants it and is pretending not to. But there are a few where it's non-consensual. And I'm not going to listen to any of that fripperies down below because this video is for people not to be shamed by the books they want to read. So if you don't care for this, just click out and leave now. And now I've wasted enough time talking about this and you're probably all fine with it. And let's get into it. But we are going to start a little bit, let me find it, holy crap. We are going to start actually at a bit easier of the end. And I have a couple historical romances, which, you know, everything's consensual and fun, but it all starts out with a kidnapping at the beginning. So let us start with the lightest, and we're very quickly going to get darker, but here's one that's actually kind of a comedy and is fun. And that is actually The Other Miss Bridgerton by Julia Quinn. So this is part of her Bridgerton prequels. They're also called the Rokeby series. And these are about the older generation of Bridgertons. And this one is about Poppy Bridgerton, who she is literally out for a walk. And she stumbles upon a smuggler's hidey hole. And she ends up getting kidnapped by the smuggler, who is a privateer. And it's Captain Andrew James Rokeby, who is actually, you know, he's a Rokeby, so he's one of her neighbors. He's one of the older brothers in the family, but she hasn't seen him in years, doesn't know who it is, and he's going around as a privateer at this point. And he can't risk Poppy giving him away, and so he ends up taking her captive. So it's one of those situations where she's locked in his room, there is serious sexual tension building, but he's still trying to keep her. You know, he knows she's going to be ruined when he brings her home, but he doesn't actually want to traumatize her or hurt her. And Poppy is just, she's up for it, man. And it also, like, James finds out pretty quickly who she is and realizes, oh shit, my dad's going to kill me. Oh crap, her dad's going to kill me. And so it puts him in a predicament. But this one is fun and could be a nice way maybe to ease you into darker things. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? But it's a fun one to have on there. Another classic historical romance, not classic as in classic, but classic as in everyone needs to read this book, is Kingdom of Dreams by Judith Mcknight. This involves Jennifer Merrick, who is, unfortunately, she's only 17 years old and she's considered a spinster, so that's something that's going to be annoying to you if that stuff annoys you. But she ends up kidnapped by Royce Westmoreland, who's known as the Wolf. She's Scottish, he's English. This is also medieval romance, and her sister end up getting kidnapped by him when they're on their way to a convent to become nuns, basically, or they've been being taken care of by nuns. It's a gray area anyway. And though Royce isn't happy that they've been kidnapped, because it's his men who do it, he now is in for a pence, in for a pound, and him and Jennifer just clash like cats and dogs. It's bananas. Jenny never stops trying to get away from him. But the one thing we do know is the first chapter of this book is at their wedding. So we start knowing that Jenny's going to be marrying this man and that she hates him more than anything else. And she doesn't understand why God would make this happen to her. But then we go back and we see that we don't understand why there's such a hateful relationship, because they actually have this great chemistry that's building between them, and everything between Jenny and him is consensual, but there's definitely animosity here, and Jenny is not afraid of him at all, which is fun, because one of the things that makes a captor-captive book hard for me is if the woman is afraid. Even if they are afraid, I like them to just, I will give you no relief, I will give you no peace and quiet until you let me go. And Jennifer is one of them. And this book, I mean, I read this book for a book club, and it took me a little bit to get into it because I was like, I don't understand what's happening. And then you get halfway in and it's like, oh, this is really interesting. And then I finished it and I was like, okay, I know why this is on everybody's favorite list, because it's amazing. And if you don't think that in medieval time a woman can't be powerful and have things, like, you'd be wrong, because society's all telling her one thing, but she is saying, I will not be broken this way. And I love it. I love it. It's great. All right, so we very quickly are out of the easier ones to easy win. I do have one more historical, though, I want to talk about, and I just read this book, and it's actually the book that, like, pushed me over into making these recommendations. And that book, I don't have the physical one in my hands yet, but it's on the way to me, because I ordered it in a self-published paperback. And that is Sea of Ruin by Pam Godwin. Holy crap, guys. If you haven't seen my weekly wrap-up yet, you'll see me gush about this book and go into super great detail about it, because it was bananas. But this is a historical romance about pirates, and it's about a female pirate. She's 21 years old, and she's estranged from her pirate husband, because a few years back, she found out that he had a lover who she could see that he truly loved. This wasn't just a strumpet or a whore. And she asked him to tell her who it was, because if he would let her go kill this woman, then they could still be together, because they're pirates. They're not the most moral people anyway. She understands if he had maybe loved someone else, but what she can't take is how devastated he is that this lover broke off with him. So it's been a few years, and she ends up, her husband has decided enough's enough. He wants her back. He loves her. He's so sorry that he betrayed her. He's going to do everything he can to make it up to her. And he ends up putting himself in the position to be kidnapped by her. Although that's not, this isn't the captive that I'm talking about, so just hold on. But she happens to have him captive and is trying to get information about a treasure map from her husband, when her pirate ship, gets attacked by a pirate hunter named Ashley Cutler. Ashley's a man, and he works for the Royal Navy, and he has his ship that has been hunting pirates, and he has a hold full of pirates, and he's picking them up along the way and is going to take them in for his reward and make sure they all hang. And Bennett, the name of our heroine, she is a high one on his list. So Ashley is a ruthless man, but he also doesn't want her to be tortured and raped. So instead of throwing her in the hold with the other 40 pirates who would happily have some female body parts to themselves for the next 10 weeks, he allows her to stay in his room. But he's not fucking around. He quickly establishes his dominance in a very dom sort of way. It's very clear that there's a sexual feeling between them, and he's very clear to her that though I find you attractive, if I want to sleep with you, number one, I just would, and number two, don't think that even if we do end up sleeping together, that it won't stop me from turning you in for my reward at the end. So we have Bennett now playing a very high-stakes game with Ashley to see who can make each other fall for whom. And he's a naughty boy. He's a naughty boy. There's more elements to this. I talk about those elements in my weekly wrap-up, but I don't want to spoil it for you. But enough to say that this is actually kind of a double Captor captive book, because first she kidnaps her husband, and then she's kidnapped by a pirate hunter. And it is so steamy and so great. And Pam Godwin, I don't know what I was expecting. I instantly bought this. The day that it came out, I got it on Kindle. But then I was a little afraid to read it because my other book I love by Pam is a BDSM student-teacher romance, which is Dark Note. It's one of my favorite books, like, ever. And I didn't know, like, how I would feel about this one, which was historical, but it was so good. And there are lots of action in that one, too. Lots of sexy times, lots of, like, it's so good. So now let us switch over to a few Mafia romances. Again, we'll start with the lightest end because though this book is dark, it also is so funny. And each one of the books I have laughed and squeed over. And that is The Master by Cressley Gold. Sorry, it's going to be shiny, so I won't hold it up very long. But this is book 2 in her Game Maker series. Each one you can definitely read separately. The first one is The Professional. The third one is The Player. All of these have BDSM elements in them. All of them have extremely wealthy, sexy men. Some of them included in the Mafia. So this character, Max, he's not part of the Mafia. He's actually part of, like, politics. But his family is involved in the mob, so he's really, entrenched in it. But what happens is, so all three of these boys, men, they had a really tough childhood, and so, they're a little bit twisty. And Max, his thing is he doesn't like to be touched by anyone. So he will call in a high-class escort. He'll usually, like, tie her up to have sex, or he'll, hold her hands behind her back, but he really doesn't like to be touched. Well, this night, the prostitute he's going to call in, the escort, the working woman, I'm sorry, don't want to use bad terms, I'm not trying to be like that. The sex worker that he calls in, it's actually her first time. And her friend got bad Botox, and so her face is messed up. And this girl, she just really needs to make the money. And her friend's like, you can make $10,000 tonight, if not more, if you can get in, upsell this guy, make some money, and then you never have to do it again. And also, I've heard that he's super sexy, and it could be fun for you. So this girl ends up going to see him, and number one, she doesn't follow any of his rules, which is not what an escort is supposed to do if they want it to be a good experience for her and the client. But he's just so into her, and he doesn't mind it when she touches him. So he asks her to come back again, and he ends up, like, going to take her on a weekend. And so it's a little bit like a Pretty Woman situation to begin with. We're getting to the captive part. We're getting there. And he's like, I'll offer you this amount of money if you'll come with me for the weekend. And she's like, okay, that's fine. I have to be back by a certain time. I have things going on. But she will never reveal anything about herself. Number one, because she is an escort and she's using a false name and stuff like that. And she doesn't want this person to know. And she can already tell, even though she's really into him too. She can tell that he has some dark stuff going on. And she doesn't know that she wants him to know everything about her, which is smart. It's smart. But then they have this wild night together. And the next morning, we realize that he didn't use condoms and she's not on any birth control, which is the stupidest thing that I've heard of an escort doing before. And it's very easy for him to jump to the conclusion that she was purposely trying to get pregnant because he's had people do that to him before. And she's an escort. He doesn't know anything about her. Why should he trust her? And so he goes a little bananas, and he decides that number one, he's going to keep her and make sure she's not pregnant, and number two, he's going to keep her until he decides to let her go. So he switches pretty quickly, and this is a scary situation. Like, he does lock her in, but she decides to take advantage of it. So she's like, well, I'm going to make his life crazy, because he's never, again, this guy's into BDSM, so he does like quote unquote punish in different ways. But this chick is just so into it. So she outwardly is always like, stop holding me captive. I need to get back to my life. I need to get back to my life. Well, this girl, she's also running from someone. And it's mighty convenient for her that this billionaire politician man is obsessed with her and is keeping her locked away safely in his penthouse and giving her all the sex that she could want. So it's not as bad a captivity as she would expect. But one other thing I have to mention, because I mention this every time I mention this book. This is the one and only use of a chastity belt that I've ever seen that is so sexy. Holy shit. Didn't know how chastity belts could be used. But obviously it's just another way of edging and of orgasm denial. And it was amazing. Like, it was so good. So definitely check out The Master. Check out the whole Game Maker series, because Alex in the first one is amazing. And the third book, which I just read, is The Player, is so good. So, two of Cora Riley's books, which I made an entire video about all of Cora Riley's books, which was my Mafia Romance breakdown, which you can go watch if you want to know more about those. But two of those books specifically also include captor-captive relationships in them. The first one I want to mention, which is like, this one feels very scary. Like, all of her books, if you don't like read them in order and like go with the intensity, because I will say they get more intense as they go, and the more that you know and trust the characters, like the darker situations you get into, you know that this author isn't fucking with you. But I will tell you that when I read Born by Vengeance, or Born of Vengeance, I think it's Born by Vengeance by Cora Riley, with Beast, or do they call him Beast? Growl. His name is Growl. Sorry, I forgot his name. And he gets given this girl by his capo because they defeat, her father's a traitor, and they defeat him, and then he gives this girl to Growl. And Growl, he is he's the enforcer at the time for the capo in Vegas. And he wants someone who belongs to him. And now he knows that this girl's given to him because his capo expected him to just rape and torture her and just use her until she was nothing to him. But that's not what Growl wants to do. He takes this golden opportunity in his mind to have a companion. And he doesn't even tie her up at home. He's like, good luck. You could try to run, but you're safer here with me than you'll be anywhere else. So it's an interesting thing. This girl is terrified. She has watched her father die brutally. Her mother and her sister are being held captive somewhere else. And so it's a really scary position she's in. But because in this situation we get some of Growl's POV, which Cora Riley, that's one of the things that makes hers stand apart, is because by giving us some of Growl's POV, we know that he's obsessed with her and that he definitely wants her. He is sick of people being scared of him. And so he wants to smooth that out and work that out. He just doesn't have a lot of finesse. So there's just something really beautiful about how their relationship unfurls. And Growl has a lot of trauma and a lot of things that this girl, who also has that, and she's feeling these feelings for him she doesn't want to feel, but she can't help herself, how they heal each other. But it still is a captor-captive because she can't get away. But it's not the scariest I've read, besides the fact that she's terrified in her head. But he never does anything to really enforce that. You know what I mean? He's also more like protecting her than holding her captive, because it would have been bad if anyone else had her, basically. Then, a little later down the line, we get Twisted Pride, which, here's the thing. I want to say this is a standalone book, but I don't think you can appreciate Remo and Serafina if you haven't read the other books in this series. I just don't know how you could. Like, you would see him as so much more of a monster you would see him as the monster that Serafina does if you haven't read the books leading up to it and you don't understand his motives and how much he respects a woman who has fire in her. Remo ends up being the new capo of Las Vegas, when actually in Born by Vengeance, we see that current capo overturned. Remo is the oldest son of that capo, and he becomes the new leader of Las Vegas. He, to get back at his rivals in, I think it's Chicago. I think it's the Chicago group. Yeah, I think so. He kidnaps the niece of the capo there, who is Serafina, and he brings her back to Vegas, and he keeps her captive, slowly torturing her family with web clips of her and with notes of her, which is all false. Like, he messes with her so much. Like, he does mess with her, but Serafina knows that he will respect her if she doesn't give in or bend. And so though Remo, from the moment that he meets her, he's like, you're going to ask me into your bed, but I'm not going to take you until you ask me to. So there's that thing holding over head. That doesn't mean he's not above sexual coercion, but there is no non-consensual sex in this book at all, which is so surprising because of what we know of Remo and of what we've seen. But Remo doesn't do that. But he isn't above letting everybody think that's what he's doing. And, oh, did I mention, Remo kidnaps Serafina on her wedding day. So he literally kidnaps her in a wedding dress, which is, God, I love Remo. I'm smiling so big. Like, it is, Twisted Pride is one of my favorite books in the series because we've just been building up to Remo. And we've known about this stuff with Serafina, and we don't know quite what to think about it. And then we get their points of view. And the things that happen with Remo and Serafina. I want her to write a sequel to them so bad because the author, she's written like second books for the capos in the other cities. And I really want him to do one of Serafina and Remo because I love them the most. So definitely check out Cora Riley's Mafia series because the Captor Captive books in there are just so good. It's so good. So then I just have 2 left. And we're getting towards the darker ones. So both of these now, they have non-consensual sex. Up to this point, I don't think any of the books I've mentioned actually had non-consensual sex, though they've had a captor-captive situation in them. These next 2 do, and they're dark. So the first one I'll talk about is Sorted by Nikki Sloan. So this is a duet. The first one is Sorted, the next one is Torrid. And this is about Luca, and he is the son of a mob boss, and he's been going to college. He had to do a lot to actually be able to go to college because, you know, the family doesn't see why you need college when we're going to provide you with all the money you need. Why do you need this? And Luca goes to a party, and he sees a girl who's been in one of the classes he's been TAing. And I'm saying this the wrong way. This is actually all from her point of view, but I'm like telling it from his, like I'm trying to be nice or something. Luca's fucked up, guys. Like, ooh, I don't like him so much. So him and this girl, she's been attracted to Luca for the last couple of years while he's been the TA in classes she's had. And so this is Halloween, and she's dressed up in this sexy little outfit, and they end up playing poker together. And while they're playing poker, things get a little heated. They end up on the couch. Things go further than she wants them to. Like, she says stop, but he keeps going because she's turned on, which is, you know, this isn't good. This isn't good. And he basically, not basically, he rapes her. Because she said no the entire way through, even though it was like, no, like, it was no. And when she wakes up the next day, she feels really sick. She's in a place she doesn't know where she's at. And Luca asks her what she remembers. And when she says, I didn't want it, he says, oh, that's disappointing. Because now I can't let you go. And I have to keep you until I've trained you to stay with me. So Luca kidnaps her and starts sexually training her pretty much immediately. Like, he literally does research on how to make someone your sex slave Yep, this guy's twisted. And he starts breaking her. And his reasoning is, if he doesn't do this, then she's going to be killed. Because she is right. She's like, I won't tell. But he's like, you are. Like, you're going to tell. And then I'll have to kill you and your family if they know that I did this. And so it's a shitty thing because he's the one who raped her. And if he hadn't, then there would be no reason to worry. But his twisted reasoning is, I either make you mine or my family will kill you. So that's what he does. And it is so good because it's Nikki Sloan. And if you've read anything by Nikki Sloan, she can make you like those bad men. Because he's a bad man. He is. But Luca pales in comparison to the most twisted fucker on this list. And that award goes to Julian from the Twist Me trilogy by Anna Sayers. I actually just got this. They've been rebound, and it's so beautiful. This series. Oh, God. This series. So this series is about Nora, and she catches the eye of Julian. And then she meets him at a club when she's 17, and he just kind of looks at her and thinks she's cute, and there's not much else. She feels this attraction for him, but she's 17. She's not supposed to be at the club. She thinks that's why he's looking at her. I'll put this down, but just look. It's so pretty. And then time goes by. She graduates from high school. She sees him at her high school graduation, but then he's gone. Then a few weeks later, she's on a date with a boy she likes. And when he leans in to kiss her, someone jumps out of the shadows, beats the shit out of this boy, and she feels the prick of a needle in her neck. And then Nora wakes up on Julian's private island, the only way on and off of which is Julian, who has a plane that he flies himself. And there's one woman who is her bodyguard / maid / cook / everything. And so this 18-year-old girl is trapped on an island with a psychopath who has decided that she's his. And he immediately starts, like, that first night, he rapes her, being very gentle and loving because he only wants to hurt her when he wants to hurt her. And he slowly begins to twist her, and he keeps her with him forever. There's 3 books in this series. The first book mostly concentrates on their time on the island, but then there's more. And Anna's in the other one. Nora knows what's happening to her. Like, she knows that as she starts to crave him and care about him and want his attention, she knows that she's become his slave, his pet. But why not find whatever possible pleasure she can in her life, or else be miserable forever? And there's some things obviously that happen that escalate the story. Julian is an international, weapons smuggler. So he's in the pocket of governments, and he doesn't exist in any database. And there's no hope for Nora because no one's going to take her away from him, and he's never going to let her go. Oh my God, guys. This is the book I'm talking about. This is the first one that I ever read that had a captor-captive situation. I don't know what possessed me to try it. I was halfway through the first book when I was just like electrified by it and was like, what am I reading? And I can't stop. And now I have to know how this can have an HEA. How can there be an HEA in this story? And some of you will call it not, because it's a sweet, innocent girl who's had a normal life be completely twisted by this man. And there's nothing anyone can do. No government's going to help her. Her parents can't save her. There's no one to get her. She's in the hands of this monster, and it's amazing. It's so good. This series just feeds so many of my darkest twisted desires. Like, it's bananas. So there you go. So there you go, guys. There is some captor-captive recommendations. You don't have to call these romances if you don't want to, although I would call most of them romances, except for the last two, because there's just such, I just love it. So this is one of the darker taboos that I enjoy. I mean, I definitely consider this more taboo than any age gap you can show me that has consensual sex in it, because these are dark. But I have a whole new list of captive books to read that I got from another booktuber that I'm excited to read. I have to be in the right mood for those, right? Because sometimes you read these and you're just like, yes, like just fall for this twisted person. And other times you read it and you're like, this is so unfair. Like, just let her go. Like, or if you had asked with flowers or asked her on a date, it would have worked better, you know? But anyway. Thank you so much for watching. All of these books, if you're interested in them, they will be in my Amazon storefront, which is always linked down below. I also have like my weekly recommendations there. I get a small commission if you buy through my link. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I put up new videos 3 to 4 times a week, and you can watch some more right now. Bye.